I wanted to start with, I remember Yanan in the podcast that we did virtually, you mentioned that you met Mike at the Greenwich Economic Forum.
Yeah,
we were talking about financial inclusion, AI, and so I wanted to listen to the other side of the story. Since you told the story of how you met Mike, and maybe Mike, you can tell your side of the story, like how you, like what drew you to Yanan and his speech, and how you guys got connected.
I think my first contact with Surfin was from Daju. And he had figured out I was interested in development. I don't think he thought I was an expert in either investing or in the technology itself, especially in this area. But the critical thing for me was Yanan and I had breakfast. In Singapore. And I was just fascinated by everything he said, by his energy level, by his commitment, you know. And I thought, this is really impressive, and I would like to find a way to help. So I originally, because of some concerns about the schedule, I originally agreed to be part of the advisory group, and which I would have been delighted to be. But then I thought, gosh, why not? So
why not? Thank you. Why not?
They were nice enough to allow me to join this really impressive board as well. So that's what it was that they were doing that was so impressive. It was trying to bring, you know, financial services to people who are going to be just left out of the system for fairly long periods of time as countries develop. And I know that's from my own kind of work. That's a multi-decade process, so that's kind of leaving out a generation or two. And so I thought, and there's one other thing that was really impressive. I had watched the development of the kind of digital finance in China. I had focused a little bit on India, which has a different history we don't have to detain ourselves with. But a lot of people, you know, like Jack Ma, the UN, were talking about spreading this around the world and in the emerging economies. But this is the first time I saw somebody doing it, you know, effectively in a company that was growing and making money. So there, I thought somebody's figured it out, and it's not easy. It's not easy because of the things Yanan's described this morning and again with the journalists, which is every country's different, it's complicated, you need different models and partnerships. I think if you took that ability that Yanan has to recruit those people, and they're highly motivated, right? They're excited about what they're doing. There's an opportunity that they wouldn't have had necessarily before. And I didn't realize that that was an important part of the story.
I want to move to England as well to get another view of what was impressive about Surfin and yourself, Yanan.
Great.
So, maybe you can share a little bit about how we...
Yeah, I would just like to share three things about Surfin and Yanan that struck me. You know, when I first met Yanan, you know, it struck me as it's incredible because we have partnered with maybe 40 fintech companies in the region. Seldom do we find a company that's bootstrapped and has grown to scale. Not only was it bootstrapped at scale, it was in multiple markets with complexity and nuance that's, you know, far beyond a single market, right? And every time I meet Yanan, I'll give him some feedback. And I realized there's another trait about him which is impressive, which is he's unstoppable, right? We give him a feedback, he come back and he'll make a lot of progress, right? And we one thing we do is we back unstoppable people. Like, you know, a great founder meets an obstacle, you know, they go around the wall, they climb over the wall, they dig a hole under the wall. And after I spent time with Yanan in Switzerland and in Japan twice, you know, I now realize that he's really unstoppable. I think he easily beats someone half or even a third of his age. Many founders, you know, of course try to, you know, build a company that makes money, right? But I think it goes much beyond that for Yanan and Surfin. He's really trying to improve a lot in life in multiple, rather developing markets that has real, you know, financial problems to be solved. And he does it with a passion that I've not seen most founders in the region, you know, exhibit.
Yeah, so I think like
to summarize, we have a person with genuinely admirable motivations who's also the energizer bunny.
So actually, my question was, where do you get the energy?
Wow.
What energizes you? You know, you've had a long career, and yet I remember the podcast you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Oh, I think like Surfin is still like a baby company. You're still very early in the journey. There's still a lot to grow, a lot to learn. So I think that really struck me, coming from somebody who's had a long career, right, and built many businesses before. So what continues to energize you?
Yeah, Paula. So I'm sitting here. I really feel I'm blessed, by these two wonderful gentlemen who each have been so successful in each of their own journey, and now somehow we connect with each other, become one family. So, to put your question in the back is, I always find that every time when I turn on a new direction, I feel blessed by the people who are able to support me. In Chinese, I don't know how to speak English. 贵人相助啊. So always there's some important person at your turning point of your career or your important journey. Someone supports you because it's Yanan just mentioned that there's different struggles, different obstacles when we set up Surfin. So how to maintain to answer question, the same passion or some energy throughout this challenge is also something I sometimes question myself and also soul searching. But as I think Mike, I always just call him Mike because he's really like a mentor. Because think about him, he has more energy than I do. Being sitting here, I know. He travel,
But you're hard to match.
Yeah. He travels so many countries, and then he's like an ambassador, right? Wherever he goes, he promotes, he share, and he willing to support. Yeah, I always tell Inland, there's one quote says, if your life didn't end, there's always things you can do. Like to put in Chinese more direct, 生命不息，折腾不止. So
life is about struggle.
Life is about struggle. So I think it's actually, I always cherish every opportunity I can still on the table. I can still do something to be impactful somehow to people who want to serve. Yeah. So I think that's why I think I try to bring serving to be so many countries, because really I think when we can echo that our work has a significant impact to some extent to a young family as far as Jakarta, as far as Africa, that means we are doing something meaningful. So I think that's a bless actually, because we are able to contribute. Because I have been witness different technical cycles, since late 2000. There's just so many different technical cycles throughout the last 30 years. And I'm still able to participate in each cycle. That's a blessing. So I don't want to waste any opportunity, right? So to cherish this opportunity, now Insignia supporting us, starting this Series A, that means we're more institutionalized rather than bootstrapping for the last 7 years. So now it's a new chapter. It's a new page for Surfin. So I should cherish this opportunity, to go beyond and hopefully can challenge it even higher level for Surfin.
I'll just add 2 more points, which I think Yanan is too humble to point out, which is, one thing he may not realize is that he is contrarian but accurate, right? Because if you think about most fintech founders, they will not necessarily go to a continent like Africa. Intuitively, actually, that makes a lot of sense because first, less competition. B, if you have superior know-how, there you have a distinct edge. So that's the fourth point. I think the last one is actually, given his hedge fund background, actually that's a big plus because he can dynamically allocate resources in accordance with the market fluctuations. And I think in the turbulent world, right, we you never know, some region of the world is going to change and make it more risky. So I think your hedge fund background actually makes it quite interesting for a multi-market operation.
Yeah. No, actually, I wanted to ask about the whole aspect of Surfin being a global multi-market company, and ask like how, as a leader, you're able to sort of manage. I remember when we did the podcast, you were in Singapore, and then after the podcast, you had a flight to Pakistan or something like that. And so you're always on the move, always going to different markets. Maybe you can share from a leadership perspective, like how you're able to kind of manage different teams?
Yeah.
Like how is that leadership style developed for you since you started Surfin?
It's always think about how to diversify risk, how to manage risk as a financial participant. So that's why we go to so many markets, try to diversify the risk as a PM, as a portfolio manager background, rather than concentration risk. If you focus on one country, one region, there's always concentration risk. So diversification is a benefit, but of course it costs more resources, it costs more energy, as myself and as our Surfin team. But then I always ask, why not? Right? Why not? If we have technology that can be scalable, if our technology can collect the different countries' data to train a model, to make our system more efficient and more scalable, so why not, right? Yeah. Because this is a benefit. This is why we can go to, at this age of time, we can go to so many countries. And secondly, I also feel it's opportunity for our young team members. They're all younger than me, right? They also have just started a career. So I want them to experience. They can go somewhere new, they do something new, to help them to raise up their career value or life goal value through this opportunity. That's how I think, hopefully enterprise can last longer. You always have a great team and can walk together for a long journey. So then how to motivate them to step out comfort zone. So I think that's we can enable each other, empower each other as a journey together. Yeah.
Right. Speaking of technological cycles and diversification, I'd love for Mike to share a little bit of your own views of how what makes Surfin, because a lot of fintechs, they're all trying to manage risk, right, in their own different way. Like what makes Surfin a little bit more competitive when it comes to that? Obviously apart from being in multiple countries.
So I think that it's two things. One, I watched this happen in China, and what was the drivers of it were Ant Financial, born out of Alibaba, and WeChat Pay, which we brilliantly entered the fray, with red envelopes or something. But they all had massive amounts of data, especially Ant Financial. They had all the e-commerce data and this transactions data, and the Chinese policymakers as well as the entrepreneurs had pushed, the digital side of the financial sector way faster than anybody else. But just before the pandemic, the gap between China and everybody else, including the developed countries, was enormous. The pandemic closed it, because a lot of economies sort of hustled along to do the contactless payments as part of the defense mechanism. So I thought to myself, geez, you really can't do this without all this transactions data. And along comes Surfin and says, well, actually, yes, you can. And oh, by the way, that's an important ability, innovation, to enter lots of markets, because in most markets, you don't have this concentrated batch of transaction data. So I completely changed my mind when I saw Surfin. I sort of thought, if you don't find a way to digitalize the kind of transactions in kind of along the lines of the China model, and then make that data accessible, you hit a major roadblock. And they basically said you can use the behavioral, social, etc. data to move past that. So I thought that was a real breakthrough. And so the ability to operate in complex environments, find the right partners, not threaten the existing institutions, building a team, and then with this innovative technology that kind of breaks through a fairly important barrier was, I think, what impressed me.
Right. I'd like to bring a concept into this conversation of techno nationalism, and ask you, Mike, what are your views on the impact of that? I think, especially a lot of countries are using technology to sort of forward their own influence, global influence, or their own agendas, and that has an impact on how tech companies are sort of operating within different jurisdictions, right? So how do you view that as sort of impacting Surfin, or do you see that as an advantage for Surfin to sort of ride along?
There is a kind of techno-nationalism. It depends on where you are. So everybody knows there's kind of a big technology competition between the United States and China. The Europeans are kind of out of the game so far. They may get back into it. But I think everybody else is trying to find a way to use this to benefit their people, but they do have concerns. So the thing that strikes me most is that virtually everywhere you find restrictions on data, not just privacy, but where the data resides and whether it can move. And that's a kind of techno-nationalism that's, I think, fully justified. The reason I don't think it is an adverse development for Surfin is A, they take data seriously, and B, the data that they use to train, I believe, for a specific country is specific to that country. So the fact that they can't bring in a ton of data from, Indonesia, except the underlying, technology concept doesn't seem to me to adversely affect them. So far it doesn't look like a major headwind to me.
England, any thoughts to add in terms of from the techno-nationalism standpoint and how Surfin is able to better navigate that?
Yeah, I think it's a big moat in today's environment, right? If you think about this whole development of DeepSeek, right? I mean, you essentially has rendered LLMs as large language models as a commodity, right? And the player that has the most data, and Surfin has what, 60 million user data right now, right? Across multi countries. I think that presents a significant advantage for Surfin to underwrite a lot of loans effectively, and in the future do many more interesting things, payments, insurance, among other things, right? So I would think that you're one of the few companies that has the potential to be truly multi-country, multi-product, with a depth of consumer information at scale that you can harness to do very hyper-local, hyper-personalized targeting. If you go back, that's essentially how the new world is being built, right? In the old world, factories were being built physically, right? I think now we're seeing data factories, right? Being built on consumer data, and I think you have a good foundation to build a really interesting company.
I also wanted to ask about how financial inclusion and agentic AI come together, and your views on that. Like how does agentic AI kind of help forward this financial inclusion mission that you have? And maybe, obviously, these are like big buzzwords that people use, but maybe you can share a little bit more concrete example of how it unfolds in specific markets.
Now it's becoming possible that we can have more interactive fintech product based on the user's demands, and then respond by the fintech company to offer a co-pilot type of. So I would imagine probably it will evolve in two stages. The first stage, maybe in this year, we'll see, is more assistant-based. There will be a AI assistant to help the customer to understand what's their financial demand. Sometimes the customer may not know what's my financial demand. They just will ask a simple question. I want to, plan this vacation probably in the summer, and how I can go about get financial resources. So maybe just a simple question about the daily life. Maybe in September I have to send my kid to college. How I should do some financial planning. So this kind of simple question from living circumstances is what customer can ask, and then how a fintech company or product offer this proper product. So that's why I think in the first stage will be more AI assistant to help the user to understand what they demand, what's their embedded finance. So I think the financial service will be more embedded in their daily circumstances. So that's why recently, in Surfin, we try to, progress toward that direction. We offer, for example, medical loan product to collaboration with hospitals, medical insurance companies, to bridge that gap when the young patients want to access hospital facilities and pay for drug bills. Then we try to understand their medical demands through the medical data. And then now we can learn their credit appetite, how much they can afford for pay for drug bills, and how much income, to be able to generate. So I think that's the next step. The AI agent will become more like a digital robot agent to interact with customers, and then to offer a one-stop solution, hopefully, through his daily circumstances. So I think this is probably in two phases. First phase this year, we try to make more interactive and to embed it to daily circumstances. And then secondly, to be more cross-sell and to be a one-stop solution.
Yeah, and for Mike, like looking in, I mean, Surfin is making a lot of progress in terms of like implementing AI into delivering financial services. Talk about medical loans and things like that. What do you advise Yanan in terms of like considerations when rolling out these types of solutions or developing these technologies from your many years of looking at how different economies have evolved? What are some of the considerations?
With both Yunan and Yinglan, I'm mostly learning and not advising, for sure. I mean, I think the one thing that Yanan and I have talked about, and I think it's important, is it's kind of behavioral, right? So the question is, what do you do with these increasingly powerful agents? Do you tell people, geez, you got to be a little bit careful here. These are prediction machines, or that was their origin. This is not a substitute for your judgment and intuition and whatnot. And so I think the successful implementation, getting the balance right between sort of misuse and very beneficial use, there's a component of it that has to do with the customer's behavior, right? Can you talk people into knowing how, can you deal with the fraud problem by sort of educating everybody, right? And I talked to several people who said, well, education is kind of important, but that doesn't really solve the fraud problem, because nobody's going to read all that stuff, and there's a California company that's trying to make the housing market that Stanford runs, work better. I mean, a kind of complete system for sellers, buyers, etc., all the functions, documents, everything. It doesn't matter what it is, and then they hope to scale it up. So the founder of this, the entrepreneur, said, we're going to deal with the fraud problem by getting certifications that will show up on any document that we send, including emails, that has like a stamp on it. It's like a tick mark, right? And he said, what do you think of that? Because the technology is available to do that. And I said, I think it's a good idea, but it's not going to completely solve the problem. If a fraudster puts an email in there and it doesn't have the tick mark, but there's a bad link, a subset of people are going to click the link. So this is an example of the kind of thing I'm talking about. So my suggestion to you, in addition to having this certification procedure, is that you send an email to people right when they first engage with this platform and tell them, any email we send you either won't have a link in it, or if it does, it'll have this tick mark, and we highly recommend that you do not connect through that. You don't hit that link, but go to the website. And this, you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Right? So if a fraud comes in and it's a bad link, if you educated people that you should never respond directly to this, but rather go to the website, engage with the platform, we'll make it easy for you to find. You see what I'm saying? I think there's an important element in finding this balance as they kind of go down the learning curve and innovate. That's kind of the balancing side of the fun and advanced technology.
Correct. And then I'll wrap up with the last for Yanan, just to wrap around, right? Like, what is the next 5-10 years for Surfin? Like, what's the? Can you spell out the future for us and how that looks like?
Yeah. So I hope Surfin become one of the agent bank in this region. That we can enjoy the next cycle of fintech, because I really feel the wind's coming and the next wave is coming with this new LLM and AI agent application. And Mike just mentioned about Gen AI, so that's where we can become AGI based fintech. Mm-hmm. I think that's hopefully become a reality. More interactive, more intelligent, more individualized, and of course, in the end more inclusive. That's 4 I's. I always summarize for surfing, and but I also have to sort through as as the founder of the company. Like Yanan just mentioned, we need to, on one hand, to diversify the benefit, but on the other hand, have to focus. So I think that's the next 5 years. We want to be more focused in one region and in 2 or 3 markets, so that we can deeply root it for surfing to be more impactful to offer fintech solutions. But I'm excited, because it just with so many talk about geographical tension, so many talk about decoupling, but I can see as long as technology is there, may bring people together. And I think Mike's Nobel Prize theory, I'm still learning, is about information economy, right? There's always information asymmetry there that could offer some stimulus to the economic growth and the productivity in emerging markets. So I hope surfing become one of the beneficiary to this new emerging market, which has the new technology cycle, has a growing consumer market, and has the next growth momentum. After China, where's the next growth momentum? I think Asian region, and also of course India as well. So I'm excited. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, amidst all the challenges, continue to ask why not, right? Yeah. So thank you very much, and
Thank you.
I'd just like to have a picture with all of you.
Yeah.